Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ginger and Chocolate Podcast. I'm your co host, Lindsay, and Mike is out for the day, but I have a guest. She was a show favorite back when we did it before, and she's back, Lisa Sheeper. And welcome, Lisa. How's it going?
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. If you guys have listened to Lisa before, or if you haven't, she's a dietitian. She's also married to my triathlon coach, and they are vegan and they've got a very healthy diet, which I aspire to and envy, but regularly just like fuck it and eat a hamburger. So we're going to talk today about all things diet, healthy living, that kind of thing. IBS, which I have, and I believe Lisa, you have some of that too. So we can talk about that as well. So first, tell a little bit about, because some people might not have heard the prior podcast. Tell a little bit about your background and becoming a dietitian and sort of maybe your journey to veganism.
Yeah. So it started when I was pretty young. My mom was vegetarian. And so I grew up in a vegetarian type house. I mean, my mom would eat vegetarian, so I watched her doing that, even though she would prepare regular meals, meat type meals for the rest of us. I actually kind of gravitated more towards that. She was a writer, still is, and she wrote columns for the Mercury News when I was growing up, and it was called Penny Pinchers, and it was how to there were 7 kids in my family, and it was how to make meals, healthy meals. She was very healthy for a large family on,
Huh.
a lower budget. So we started eating tofu when I was pretty young, and that kind of stuck. So between her, starting that way, I think I was always a little less on meat. I really wasn't as a big meat eater until more like high school. Um, I was swimming, and our coach got all these coupons to Carl's Jr. And if you swam a good workout, or I was just like this one summer, he was handing them out left and right. So I was eating a lot of burgers and stuff. But it was right before I went off to college, and I went to college and ate in the dorms and was not impressed with the meat. And kind of from then on, I just kept gradually cutting back on my meat intake.
Hmm.
And I met Tim right around then, my husband and your coach, and he was a very healthy influence. And so when it came to I was struggling to figure out what major I wanted. And between his influence and my mom's influence, I uh, settled on nutrition and became a dietitian. And then, but still ate a little bit of chicken, fish, turkey, kind of the white meats. And I remember distinctly one camping trip, Tim came back from a run and said, "I'm going to be vegan now, right now." And so we kind of transitioned to that for him. I was cooking vegan meals for him
Hmm.
and started eating a lot of that myself, and just gradually, more and more. So for me, it was a very gradual transition
Mm-hmm.
until my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, gosh, 7 years ago, 7 years ago. And my mom, again, very pro health, was trying to figure out what to do, if there was anything she could do to help him out. And um, Tim actually heard a podcast about Alzheimer's solution, and it was a couple of researchers down in Loma Linda, California, and they were plant based. And I did more research on it, and I talked with my mom about it. I thought for her it would be a great thing because she already was vegetarian, and she talked with my dad about it, and they went vegan, and I went with them in order to help support them. So that's kind of the transition. So I really didn't become completely, or I would say 95% vegan until about 7 years ago. But since then, I've definitely embraced it. I
Mm-hmm.
teach it, I feel most comfortable with it. I will occasionally have something that is more on the vegetarian scale. So something with a little dairy in it, or
Mm-hmm.
egg or something in it. I don't eat scrambled eggs or anything like that. I don't
Right.
actively seek out those things, but if it is in there and I'm kind of either don't have a choice or traveling or
Mhm.
just feel like trying something, I will have a little bit of that. But for, I'd say, again, most of the time I'm fully plant-based and love
Oh,
it.
that's great. That's awesome. It's
Yeah.
awesome to hear too, 7 years, because
Yeah.
there's so much noise on online about being vegan or not being vegan. And, um, I've heard people say, oh, it's not sustainable. These people who are vegan influencers aren't really eating vegan the whole time. They're just saying they are, just things like that. And so it's good to hear someone that I know and trust who you have no reason to say you're vegan when you're not on, you're not an Instagram influencer trying to pretend. Um, and so the reason I've heard so much about, oh, they're not really eating is because people think they can't get enough protein.
Oh, yeah.
That seems to be like the big P word. Like if you're eating vegan, you cannot get enough protein. Um, I'm just wondering, do you ever feel like deficient? Have you had any blood work that shows that you're deficient? I feel like Tim would not be able to perform
Yeah.
at the level he does if he was protein deficient. But what do I know? I'm an accountant. I'm not a dietitian. So talk a little bit about like protein and what you do and how that really happens. With an
Yeah.
actual vegan diet.
Well, I mean, I think I may not be the best example of that, but you touched on it with Tim. I mean, he was an endurance athlete, and he did. I don't know if anybody knows about the Epic Five, which is the race in Hawaii where you do five different Ironmans in 5 days on five different islands, and he did that completely plant based, and he did
Wow.
not have any problem. And I can tell you, he doesn't compete doing the endurance stuff quite as much, but he does these long bike rides and he'll be gone almost the entire day. And he's totally plant based. He is 100% vegan. I think he is swayed from that one time when he was on a multi-day mountain bike event, and he and his partner, they had to navigate where they were, and they got lost, had no food, and came upon somebody who made them, I think, a chicken meal, and he didn't have a choice. That was it. That was the only
Yeah.
food, and he ate it. And that was the only time that I can think of, and he's probably been vegan for, gosh, I'd say like 12 years or so, or
Wow.
maybe even 15.
Hmm.
And that's it. And he has completely sustained it, no problems. He's stronger than I've ever seen him.
Hmm.
I feel stronger as well. I mean, I noticed the biggest difference for me from when I went vegetarian. So I was still having dairy and eggs and things like that. When I went from that to fully plant based, I noticed for my workouts that I wasn't as sore and I
Hmm.
wasn't as tired. And it was a pretty big difference. I was pretty surprised because I would do a workout that would normally make me pretty tired afterwards or pretty sore, really more sore the next day. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is really going to hit me tomorrow. And this was again initially. So it was only a few days afterwards. And I was shocked because I wasn't sore.
Huh.
And Tim notices that too. And his recovery, it's so much faster when he's fully plant based than before when he wasn't. So he's like, I'll never give it up. I mean,
Right.
I'm I'm shocked watching what he can do
Hmm.
being fully plant based. And we get our protein. I would say our main source of protein is tofu. We have
Okay.
tofu a ton. And of course, I'm an older woman now, and tofu is a great way to, it kind of mimics estrogen, and so that helps with
Um,
hot flashes. And so I definitely embrace tofu. I don't have any
mhm,
problem with tofu. It plays heavily in our
mhm,
diet. Soy milk, soy of all different forms, edamame, we have tempeh, but
mm,
the main one is tofu. So
uh-huh,
that, and then, rice and beans, and we use a lot of hemp nutritional yeast. I make almost every vegetable dish I have with some nutritional yeast. I put it in almost anything.
uh-huh. Oh, I
And
love that
it's amazing because things that you wouldn't think of having a lot of protein, like hemp, these little hemp seeds,
stuff.
you
Mhm.
sprinkle them in something. I make my own breads
Oh,
and I put them in breads, and it packs a punch for how much protein it is. I have high protein breads with just putting in that. So,
Wow.
and flax and chia seeds. And so it's actually, I never even worry about the protein that I'm getting. And I
Hmm.
feel completely fine. I've had blood work, nothing has been amiss. So,
Huh. Okay.
yeah. So we don't have
That's
any
good.
problem. I think what most people should be focusing on is where do they get their fiber from? Because the American
Right.
diet, or even a kind of more healthier American diet, usually is pretty low in fiber. And
Mhm.
we even try to make sure we get enough fiber. So I think we don't struggle with the protein. We just try and make sure we get enough fiber.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm not getting enough. In fact, I know I'm not getting enough
Most
fiber.
people aren't. You are not alone. You are among the masses. Most people do not get nearly enough fiber.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not the protein. One thing that we do supplement with though is a vitamin B12. So
Hmm.
even though I've had mine tested and everything was fine, I think it's still something that we supplement with,
Hmm.
and and
And what
Tim does
form?
too. That and
What
vitamin D.
what form do you guys use? Do you do a oral
We
spray
do
or these shots?
we do a gummy because
Oh,
the
okay.
latest that I was just reading about recently was that ones that are in like multivitamins, those actually
Hmm.
can kind of, I don't remember exactly how they put it, but they can be not as good. They kind of get mixed up and sometimes they're not as active as
Hmm.
a typical a gummy
Yeah.
V12 vitamin. So we do that.
Okay.
And then we take a gummy vitamin D, which we found to people, we in our household, you're grabbing a gummy real easy because it's kind of it's tastes good, it's easier
Yeah.
to swallow, and I have found that everybody tends to take those, whereas when it was in a capsule form,
Yeah.
people weren't having it. So
Right.
that's what we do, and those are the only two supplements that we take on a regular basis.
Okay. Okay. I actually take B12 right now because I take um, a like a bio boost, and it has B12. So the bio boost is taken, and I can't tell you everything in it because I don't remember, but it's taken with a subcutaneous shot, and then I now have B12 they send me as well, and it's taken also with a subcutaneous shot. So I learned how to do that. It's actually pretty easy because you don't need to do muscles or veins or anything like that. It's just a little prick. So I'm taking that now, and I'm hoping that as I, eat less meat, that will help that form of B12. We'll see. We'll see
Yeah,
what happens. Um, but so far, it's helped me feel just taking these bio boosts and the B12 has helped me just with some fatigue issues that I've been having. And you know, I
yeah.
like it. I was at for I actually would never have given myself a shot, but I have girlfriends that were doing it and they were like, "It's super easy. It's just this little tiny needle." And I was like, let me see this needle." Like, let me
Yeah.
see cuz and it is tiny. So I was like, "Okay, I'll try it. I'll try it." Cuz I have tried to eat plant-based before and I used a spray, like a B12
Oh,
spray.
yeah, right. Yeah.
Um and I think it was not the B12 that was my issue. I think the real issue is that um, for me, when I eat plant based, is that I am lazy and busy and I
Yeah.
don't put together a good enough meal. And you shared with me a whole host of different types of meals and suggestions. So you've definitely coached me on that and given me really good ideas. And what I'll do is I'll end up reaching for a lot of processed vegan
Yeah.
stuff, a
Right.
lot of
And there's a
processed.
lot of that out there for sure.
Yeah, you can eat like garbage and eat
Yeah.
vegan,
Yeah,
you
you
know.
can. You can eat Oreos and Coke, and that's vegan,
Right.
but it's certainly not healthy. And there's a lot of vegan fast food
Mhm.
that, yeah, same thing. It's
Yeah.
really not that healthy. So I think you do have to be a little bit careful, but that's a good way to kind of transition.
Mhm.
People always ask me about the plant-based burgers, Impossible
Yeah.
Burger, and they're a good transition. They're not
Mhm.
healthy
Right.
necessarily, but they're healthier than a meat burger. So
Right.
I think whatever's going to get people to transition to
Mhm.
more plant-based. And when I work with people, I don't say they have to be full plant-based. I
Right.
want them to try and transition as much as they can to a more whole food plant-based.
Mm.
So when you look at whole foods, then you're getting more of less processed, and that's always my goal, and it is for my clients too. Just try and do that, and it's not as hard as people think. I spend a lot of time doing it because I enjoy it, so I'm
Right.
trying to think of new ways to prepare foods. And but that being said, I do spend a decent amount of time, but it's more for just kind of trying things out. It When
Right.
I'm cooking, I don't spend a tremendous amount of time. I can make meals pretty quickly.
Mhm.
And I mean, people are kind of surprised. It's like it's already ready, and it doesn't take that much time. And it's really getting used to shopping, and
Mhm.
it's just going to be like anything. At the beginning of it, it's going to be a little bit harder. I remember transitioning. It was like it took me a long time to go grocery shopping. But then after that, now I can fly through the store because I know exactly what I'm buying. It's just like you. When you go
Right.
grocery shopping,
Right.
you know what you're getting. And
Yeah.
then I know what I make when I come home. And we all kind of rotate around probably the same, maybe 6 or 7 things that we like to prepare, I think, for
Mhm.
people that
Mhm.
are cooking. And I do the same thing. The thing that I try and change up are maybe the spices that I use. So my
Oh, okay.
meals are really similar, but I'll throw different vegetables in, or I'll throw different spices in, and
Mhm.
that changes the whole dish. So, or
So it's not
different
that hard.
grain makes a
Yeah.
difference.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
And
Because
I
I'll
usually will make a pot of greens, like I'll make it in the rice cooker, a different type of
okay.
grain. And then I keep that separate. And then I make the vegetables and I keep those separate. And then I usually make enough for 2 nights so that I cook one night
Okay.
and then basically reheat the next night. So I try to make it so that it's as easy as possible on myself so that I don't have to cook these big meals every night.
Mhm.
So I think in a lot of ways, I'm actually cooking less than most people do.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's good to know. And um I feel like one of the things I was worried about was the protein. So I'm trying to, take all this extra processed food, and that's probably what's making me not feel so great
Yeah.
is
Because
drinking all
usually
the
there's a
extra.
lot of fats, there's a lot of chemicals,
Yeah.
there's oftentimes sugars in it. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Instead of having, I mean, we will have occasionally, I'll use like the tofu sausage type. No, actually, they're not
Uh-huh.
even tofu. They're the fake sausages.
Mhm.
And one brand in particular, I can't even remember the name of it right now, but I tend to like that one. And I use it as like a condiment. I'll cut up
Mhm.
a couple of them in smaller pieces and I'll put that in with tofu and
Mhm.
vegetables and then put some different seasonings in to make it, just kind of give it a different flavor. But we don't do a whole lot of the processed uh,
Right.
things, and again, if you just switch up your seasonings, that can make a
Mhm.
big difference. Get some different sauces that you like, or make some different sauces too, and that
Yeah.
makes a difference as well. And you can use tofu, and you can put these different sauces on it, and
Mhm.
it takes the flavor of the sauce that you're using.
Yeah, that's what I've understood, and that's something I'm kind of committed to working on is
Yeah.
preparing tofu because a lot of times I don't like the texture of the tofu or something.
Okay.
And I'm like, ugh. But then I've gone out to eat and I've had tofu that was delicious. So I know
Right.
that it's possible,
Yeah.
It's more of me figuring out how to cook it in a way that that I like.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the things I've noticed, which is a which is not saying anything good about the meat industry or the American diet, is that it's almost like a addictive food. It's to a certain
Oh,
extent for me. Like I
absolutely.
start missing it in the sense of like just the flavor of it or something, and it feels to me that similar way that when I give up sugar feels like it's addictive.
Oh, it is.
Um,
They make it
oh,
that way on purpose.
good point. They so They're mixing other things in the meat a
Oh,
lot of the
yeah.
times, and yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of times there's salt. That's how
Mhm.
they plump up things, absorb more fluid, then they can sell
Oh.
it for, because if it's got a more fluid in it, it
Mhm.
weighs more, therefore they can sell it for a
Yeah.
higher price. Do you know what I mean? Because they're
Mhm.
they're selling you sometimes these plumped up chickens with a lot
Yeah.
of water in them. And
Right, right.
so you're thinking you're getting more, but you're paying for a lot of additives too. And they put,
Mhm.
I mean, anything that has a lot of salts and sugars and fats, that is something that's very addictive, and it's
Mhm.
very hard to, as the saying is, eat just one. I mean, if you're
Right.
having chips or something, it's hard to do. I can't do it. I can't. There's
Yeah.
certain things I just don't have in the house, period, because
Right.
they're too addicting. You get that salt hit in there and it's like, oh man,
Mhm.
I need more of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the way it is.
That's true. I love to eat popcorn, with a little salt on with a lot of salt on it, and that's one of those things that, I can't have in the house because 'cause I'll if I buy a bag of pre-made popcorn,
Yeah.
I'll eat the whole bag, and then I'll be like, "Well, the whole bag was only like 250 calories, so not that big of a deal," but it was probably cups and cups of salt, to be
Right.
honest.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
I use a salt substitute, so it's a
oh,
lower so it's I still use one that has salt in it, but it's sodium and potassium. So,
oh,
and it's totally acceptable. My family doesn't even realize that that's what I'm using, and I don't cook with it, but
mhm,
for flavoring afterwards, if somebody
mhm.
wants salt, then that's what I give them. So they're getting at least half, if not less. I think it's like the one that I'm using, it has about 40% salt, and the
Oh, okay.
60% is more the potassium. So that kind of thing, can make it. And then what I do when I make popcorn is I have this little bowl. It's like a silicone bowl that I got off of
Mhm.
Amazon. And you just put the popcorn kernels in there. It has popped it the best that I've ever had, way better
Oh,
than putting oils in there. And then I'll
mhm.
oftentimes use a teeny bit of vegan butter. I
Uh-huh.
mean, like maybe a couple of teaspoons full. And then I
Okay.
sprinkle that over the whole bowl. And then I like to have a little bit of the low sodium salt
Uh-huh.
and then nutritional yeast.
That is good. I've
Really
done the
good.
the
So it kind of
popcorn,
makes it
yes.
stick to it. It's really yummy. I was surprised. I thought I would never like that, and I actually really do.
I bought an air popper because I was like, "Okay,
Yeah,
I cannot keep buying these bags." So I could buy
yeah,
an air popper and make an appropriate amount for myself and Josh, and I did see a recipe to put nutritional yeast on it, so I did it, and I really liked it, and Josh loves it. He's like, "When are you gonna make that popcorn with that
yeah,
stuff?" He has no idea what it is. He doesn't care. He just knows
right.
he really likes it.
Yeah.
Uh, and, so you don't cook with salt, it sounds like. You just don't
No, I
even put it
try
in there.
not to. I mean, every once in a while, there's a seasoning that has salt. There's one that I like, umami, but I
Mhm,
don't. I try not to use it that much. And again, I find that if you cook without salt, I use more herbs and spices
mhm.
and things. And then afterwards, if somebody wants a little bit of salt, that's when I let them, because it's on top of the food, so that when you bite into the food, you get that flavor. Whereas I found if you cook with it, it kind of like dilutes the taste. It's the
Oh,
same thing with sugar.
right.
I was making these muffins. During COVID, I for my son, I came up with a bunch of different sugar-free and fat-free muffin recipes. And
Oh,
but he would be like, oh, they're not sweet enough, and I would sprinkle literally like, I mean, just a pinch of sugar on the top of them, and you get that flavor when you're biting into it. And
ah,
that's stronger in your mouth than because it's on top. That's what
right.
I found. And so that's why I don't salt, and
Mhm.
I try not to use much, if any, sugar when I'm
Okay.
making baked goods. So,
That makes sense actually to have it
yeah.
be the first thing that hits your tongue, then you
Yep.
can taste it
And
without having the whole
I
thing.
don't cook with oils either. I stopped
Okay.
doing that. I cook with, usually I just put a little bit of water when I'm
Mhm.
sauteing things.
Huh.
And then again, I'll use a nutritional yeast. I'll sprinkle like on the vegetables and tofu, and it makes like a creamy, almost cheesy sauce.
Oh,
Oh, I use so much nutritional yeast, and it's loaded with protein, and
yeah.
it's fortified with B12. So we're usually doing pretty well with that.
Mhm,
And then
mhm.
you put the spices on and everything, or I use broth. So one of the two
Okay.
when I'm cooking. So the broth does tend to have some sodium, but I try and use a lower sodium one. You can make
Uh-huh.
your own, but again, I think there's a balance between making it something that people are going to actually do. Where if
Right.
you use a, rather than, but a lot of people, making your own broth is much healthier, but,
Mhm.
I don't do that. So,
Yeah, yeah. I like to listen to Rich Roll's podcast, and
yeah,
I know his wife. I've got their cookbooks, which I've got a huge array of beautiful, like plant-based cookbooks.
so do I.
I don't go into them very often, but they're there. They look great.
Yeah,
Um, but I just remember reading through, and she was like sprouting her own beans and things, and I was like,
I do that. I
I
have them on the
can't.
counter. I
I
have my
was like,
jar of them. I'm looking at them. Yeah, it's super easy. And
is
again,
it?
another great source of protein. And you can sprout just about anything.
How do you even do it? Because I was looking in her, it seemed easy, but then I
You
also
want
was
me to
like,
show
I don't.
you the jar?
Yes,
Okay, hold on a
yes,
second. I'll be
please,
right back. I'll
sure,
grab it.
yeah, awesome, that's great. Super excited because this is not something that
All
I've
right,
done, but I've
here's my
wanted to do
jar.
it. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay,
So I ordered the lids off of just Amazon. The jar's just a regular jar, mason
jar.
jar. You put the top in, and I don't know if you can tell, but it's a very
Okay,
fine screen.
okay,
And this one is different sprouting mixes. So I put it's funny. It's on Amazon. It's called Holly's Mix, and it's a bunch
okay.
of different lentils, different kind of beans, and
Uh
then I
huh.
do broccoli sprouts and I forget what else. But you can sprout kind of anything. The only thing I don't recommend sprouting is alfalfa because those tend to be higher in E. coli even when you're doing them straight from the seeds.
Oh,
But
okay.
these, yeah, I mean, I just put the seeds on the bottom,
Uh
fill it
huh.
up with water about halfway, you soak it overnight or for a few hours, drain it off, and then from then on, you just rinse it with water twice a day. And then I just leave it like on its side and it drains
Uh
out.
huh.
You can see, I mean,
Yeah.
this has been going for a while, but they're live. So this was down to about halfway after dinner yesterday, and it
Uh huh.
just not halfway, maybe it was about up to here, but
Uh
you
huh.
can see what happens overnight. I mean, it's
So when you rinse it, you just put water in it, and then you just dump it
and then
back
I
out.
dump it out, and then I have it sitting on my I have a windowsill, and I just have it sitting there, and then you rinse it twice a day. I rinse it in the morning and I rinse it in the evening. That's it. And then they're
Wow.
just growing. And then after a while, sometimes when I mean it'll be stuffed full, and then
Uh
I
huh.
just put it in the fridge.
Okay.
But it still
Okay.
keeps growing even in the fridge. So it's great because I mean, these are expensive and
Yeah.
these are the freshest you can get.
Yeah.
So
And
you
they're
can sprout
tasty.
so many different things. But anyway, that's sprouts
Well,
for
that
you.
is easy, and that looks like
So
something I
easy.
could
I have
do.
friends, and I have a friend who got it, and she sprouts. There's a little thing that she bought that's like a rack, and she can put two jars in there, the same size jars, comes with
Uh-huh.
the same lids, and they just hold them in there, and then it drains off. And she just, so she sprouts different things. I put mine all together, but
Mhm.
you can do so many different things when you're sprouting. Oops.
That's awesome. That's all right.
There's
Koa
my
the
dog
the
barking
dog
at the
Koa
deer.
has
Sorry.
there's deer, which
I
is
know
totally
there are.
fine.
I'm watching them up above, but he barks at those. So,
Listeners, this dog is not a big dog. I'm not sure
oh
he
yeah,
could take down a deer. Well,
no, he just is, protective of us here at those
yeah.
deer.
I have a couple of those too. They've been locked out of the my office right now, and I have a little beeper that I beep if they bark,
Yeah,
and it's not it's on a collar, but I don't have to put the collar on because they know if the collar is sitting
right.
there
Yes.
that it'll make a beeping noise, and they don't like the no. I mean it they because they both had the collar on in their lifetime,
Yeah.
and so they it's not a shot collar because I don't think those are
No, not my
great. It's a
favorite either.
no, no. Um, but now I just look at here. I call it your necklace. Here's a necklace. I'm putting it on the coffee table. You know what this
Yeah.
means? And they've been quiet so far.
Yeah.
I have the little beeper here in case, but um, all right. So no oils, and you
Yeah.
do make it sound very easy and fun, and
It
I
really
think
is not that hard. I mean, that's my favorite part about it. That's what I specialize in is working with people to transition to being plant-based, as much
Mhm.
plant-based as they want. I mean, again, I don't say you have to be fully plant-based. I
Mhm.
think that if you started out over here, and if this is eating a ton of meat and this is fully plant-based, just gradually getting yourself over there. And I've had clients that it takes them a long time. Well, you saw my transition. It was
Mhm.
not overnight by any means. It may be going from vegan to plant-based. I mean, going from vegetarian to plant-based was pretty much overnight. But
Mhm.
but the rest of it, the transition was pretty, a long
Mhm.
transition. And I think it's whatever works for you.
Do you recommend that people so say so for me, my ideal lifestyle in terms of my food would be vegan because of animal welfare issues.
Yeah,
That's my main. I mean,
same.
I know there are health benefits, but for me, animal welfare is a big thing.
Yeah,
And every time I eat meat, I'm like, I'm so sorry,
yeah,
And I try to eat the ones that are like supposed to be happily in a pasture and humane. But then, if you watch any documentary, like I watched You Are What You Eat
yeah,
not too long ago, and then they're like, well, 90% of humanely treated pasture raised animals end up in a factory farming situation before they are killed. And I'm
yeah.
like, well, that's not what I was aiming for. I'm
No.
just paying more for meat that is being mistreated. So that doesn't make me very happy. But anyway, so do you recommend that someone in my situation, do this transition of like going slowly from being meat eater to vegetarian to um, vegan, or do you recommend someone rip the band-aid off and you know, just go straight over to being vegan?
It really depends on you. I think there's pros and cons for both. You definitely hear where people go just, well, Tim did. One day to
Mhm,
the next, he was fully plant based.
mhm,
Um, but I think it depends on the person.
mhm.
Um, some people just they can't imagine it, and it's just too much. I've had people will do it for 30 days so that they
Okay.
know that they can go back if they want to. And oftentimes, once you give them a jump start of 30 days, they're okay to go forward. Or they'll kind of go, well, I'm going to have it on weekends. I'm still going to have meat, or I'm going to have,
Mhm,
special occasions or whatever.
mhm,
So I think it really depends on you. What is going to
mhm,
be easier? Sometimes going fully plant based quickly is easier because you don't have these, well, in this situation, I'll do it this way, or, this time I'll
mhm.
have meats or I'll have dairy or whatever. I think um, it can be easier, but for some people, it's so overwhelming, they won't do it. So
Mhm.
you kind of have to just decide what's right for you.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but
Um,
there's so many ways to do it now. It depends. There's so many different companies now that will deliver either fully prepared meals.
yeah.
Just seeing
It's
those
okay.
deer. Sorry. But
That's
they'll,
totally fine.
they'll get either fully prepared meals that are plant based, or they'll, get the kind that like Blue Apron, where they deliver the ingredients, so you don't have to shop, and they give you everything and you prepare it.
Mhm.
Um, but that helps a lot for
Yeah.
people. Sometimes they're not necessarily super healthy,
Right,
but
right,
it's better. Again, it's better than a lot of the alternatives out there.
right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna think about, like what will help me with this transition. People who listen to the show know I've tried many, many times and failed, but I feel like every attempt is better than no attempt, because I get time a month or 3 months or 6 months, and or some time being vegetarian. So now my dogs are barking, so we're all good. um, but I'm going to think about what would be best in for me because I do kind of feel like a ripping the band-aid off scenario is good for me because of the way my brain works. I'm sort of an all or nothing, black and white type thinker. And so if I get into a gray area, I'll easily just be like, well, there's meat in this gray area, so now I'm going to just eat this meat again. Um, So one other thing, I wanted to make sure we talked about is about IBS symptoms
Yeah.
and issues, and kind of what that looks like. Um, One thing I will just quickly say in terms of the eating, um, like protein powders and things that have a lot of, like, because I'll get like chocolate flavor and I'm like, yum yum, it's vegan, but it will have, and it'll say no sugar, but it will have like sugar alcohols in it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what those are, but I do know that they've been really bad for my IBS for flaring it up. I've
Yeah.
noticed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it on a run once that
Yeah.
we both suffer from IBS. I'm more SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. I've been tested for that, and was positive. And I've struggled my whole life with that,
Mm-hmm.
from a young age. I remember my mom, went full on into, she bought her own grinder for grains and
Mm-hmm.
made this whole grain bread. And I was loving it and
Mm-hmm.
had it for breakfast and then lunch. And then about 3 o'clock, I was getting these horrible stomach aches. And it
Okay.
was probably from that whole grain bread. It was just a little bit too much for my gut. And so that's kind of what
Mm.
started it. But yeah, it's a challenge, and I've got to say sometimes being plant-based is a little bit harder maybe for that, but I can't go back to meat. I can have
Yeah.
a little bit of dairy and a little bit of cheese, no, not cheese even really, but a little bit of egg sort
Mm-hmm.
of, but if it's in something, but I will never go back to meats, never. No
Yeah.
meat. It's just I can't do it. And again, it's a lot of the animal, I can't do that for me.
Yeah.
Um, so, I've tried the low FODMAP diet. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
you've tried that. I think that's
Yes.
definitely something that works. And it's funny because here I am a dietitian. It was hard. It was
Yeah.
very hard. It took me a long time to figure out exactly what foods I could have. I even went to the source. The Monash University was
Mm-hmm.
the ones that started or developed the low FODMAP diet. So I went and
Mm-hmm.
got their app and
Mm-hmm.
try and use that. But it was very specific, maybe almost too specific. And I was using, trying to combine it with other ones. And they were saying you could have this food, but the Monash was saying, no, you can only have it this amount. And
Yeah.
it was a lot trickier than I thought. And I thought, God, people, and I have this knowledge of nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to say, of everything, that's the only thing that actually worked for me. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't, it's not sustainable and you're not
No.
supposed to be on it for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, I barely made it to a minute, and I don't think I did it perfectly. I just got from my doctor was like, "Here's a list of things
Yeah,
that you can eat and cannot eat,
right,
and we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do, re-entry or whatever,
right.
and see what the problems are." And one of the things I noticed was that there were certain things on there that I felt like I didn't feel like caused an issue. I'm trying
Yeah,
to think of an example. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but that then when we did the reentry, I had stopped eating them, and then we did this, like, roll them back into the diet, and now I felt like something in my stomach, and I'm like, "Oh, but I
yeah,
didn't used to feel that when I would eat whatever." And you know, so that was a little bit of an issue for me. I already know that dairy is a huge problem for me. It's a
yeah, it is for a
problem
lot of
for
people.
mhm. And within the African American community, the
Yes.
bulk of us are lactose intolerant, although eat a lot of dairy in the diet.
Yeah,
And I know, like, I'll have, and I'll eat it. I'll be like, "Ooh, brie," and I'll just eat some. And basically, I'm doing this assessment of, like, is it worth the pain that I'm going to have later? And in
right.
some cases, I'm like, it is. And then, of course, later, I'm like, that's not. It wasn't
Was it
worth it.
worth
It wasn't
it?
worth
I go through the
it.
same thing in various other foods. Yeah,
It's a hard thing to really deal with, I've found. I mean, one of the things that's helped me, but I don't really want to have this as a long-term solution, is my doctor has given me like a prescription to
yeah,
take. And but I don't want it to be that, like, I have to take something after I eat all the time to keep from having stomach cramps,
Yeah.
that just seems like that's not really gonna be a good long-term solution.
Oh,
So,
I agree. I just won't do it. I mean, I remember starting with my traditional doctor, and then I went to a naturopath
mm,
because I just, I ran out of options with my traditional doctor. She said, I can
mhm,
give you antibiotics, even though she's the one of the most, outside the box type person
mhm.
at Kaiser where I am. But she said,
Oh, uh-huh.
I can only prescribe antibiotics for you. I can't prescribe herbals. So I
Right.
went to somebody who could, and I used those. And well, like I said, they would help some, but I found the
Mhm.
only thing that really worked was a low FODMAP diet. And I stayed on it for months, which you're really
Oh,
not
did
supposed
you?
to. And then I found that I was having some other issues from being on the low FODMAP for so long. So,
Right.
but I would try and reintroduce things, and then I would have the problems again. And
Mhm,
luckily, I think it just, for me, it flares up badly at
mhm,
times, and I think for me it's mostly stress. Even a
mhm.
good stress, even good
Yeah,
stress, if
yeah.
it's too much, it comes around the holidays, and
Mhm,
it's a happy stress, but it's still a stress for me, it seems like. And
mhm,
I think for a lot of people that is one of the big triggers, and
mhm.
it takes me a while to kind of relax, and and just I go back a little bit to the low FODMAP, closer. I may not go
Mhm.
completely, but just follow it a little bit more, and it seems that my gut seems to kind of calm down a little bit. But it's
Yeah,
like this balancing act, back and forth, back and forth. And yeah, I found some things that tend to trigger it more so than others, but for me, I don't think it's a food thing. I think it's a
mhm.
stress thing, because I'll go along and eat these foods and I'm totally fine.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
all of a sudden, I'm not anymore. Well, to me,
yeah.
that's not a food issue. I have things that I may be more sensitive to food wise,
Sure.
like the wheats,
Mhm.
but I don't think I'm allergic to any
Right.
foods. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
things more intolerances or sensitivities.
yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people that are like that, and it probably is a lot of stress. And I can't even say I live a high stress lifestyle at all. I just think that that's just the way, and that's why it's
Mhm.
meditations and yogas and,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, I agree.
exercise.
Exercise is so important, for
Yeah.
me, for my stress, but meditation is also a key component, and I do have a high stress job, and,
Yeah.
and I agree, with the exception of dairy, and, sugar alcohols, which
Yeah.
every time are gonna get me,
Yeah.
with the exception of those 2 things, I do too go through these cycles. So this medication my doctor gave me, I'll go months and not use it at all,
Yeah.
and then I'll have this cycle of, like, where my stomach is just cramping, like, and it's debilitating, and then I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna do it because I gotta get through life."
Yeah.
Um, and for me, I think stress just plays a huge component in many areas of my life, and it's a we talked about it when we were on that run, but I kind of
Yeah.
forgotten about it until you just brought it up. It's like if I think about it, the most stressful times at work, I switched jobs recently, and what the driving force behind switching firms was that I had a boss who was incredibly hard to work with. She's a
Yeah.
ball of stress herself and would just put that on everybody, and I was getting to the point where I would wake up, and the first thing when I woke up, I'd have a pit in my stomach about, okay, I got to go look at my email. And I know there's going to be emails from her because she would get up at 4:30 every
Oh
morning and
God.
start finding
Yeah.
emails.
Yeah.
And in fact, I talked to Tim about it because Tim was trying to encourage me to put myself first with my exercise. Not, and he was saying, it shouldn't be the exercise. We don't want it to be an additional source of stress,
Yeah.
but do something for yourself. He was saying, do something for yourself before you check the email. Cause once you check the email, it's going to be all over. And, and he's completely right about that.
Yeah.
But the way that I was interacting with this person, I just couldn't get myself to take care of myself first. And I had a lot of IBS issues. I was with her for over 5 years. And the
Okay.
last couple, as she neared retirement, forced retirement, the firm was going to, they have you hit a certain age, you got to retire.
Yeah.
She didn't want to do that. So as she neared that age, she got kind of kind of crazy and just became, more of what she already was. And that's where my stomach just started clenching up. And I would have, everything I ate would cause some sort of cramping or backup or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, Switching jobs is a change, and like you said, this is a good change, but I'm
Yeah.
kind of in that phase again where it's a little stressful because it's a whole different ball game. I don't know these people, and I have been having some issues, but on the other hand, the job itself, like, no one's crazy, everyone's acting like a
Yeah.
normal human being, and so I do have a little less of a pit in my stomach, and it seems to have helped the situation somewhat. So I'm
Yeah.
excited about that. I'm excited about that.
That's good. I mean, I think we have to really work towards reducing the stress, and or how we deal with it. That's where I
Mhm.
am, because I don't have a tremendous amount of stress in my life, and I realize I have to deal with even how I handle positive stresses.
Mhm.
And I think that
Mhm.
that does make a difference, how
Yeah.
you deal with that and taking care of yourself. And the exercise always helps. I live in Santa Cruz and I live
Mhm.
by the ocean. So
Mhm.
I take my dog out every day to the beach or, to the forests. And
Mhm.
that helps a lot, I've noticed.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
think, yeah,
I live near the ocean too, and I'm the
yeah,
opposite. Like, I don't go down there very often, and
I
every time I
know.
go down there, I'm like, "Oh, look, I can breathe." It feels
Yeah, it
great.
is. It's something about being at the ocean. And they've even said that's just, it really does. It's like being in the forest
Mhm.
bathing. I think it's the same
Yeah.
thing at the ocean. You actually feel it. And I
Yeah.
feel so much less stress over here and it
Mhm. Mhm.
relaxes me and I feel like this positive attitude. So I try. Well, I have the dog, thanks to
Mhm.
you. And it makes it, it's kind of, I do it every day because he needs to get his walk in. And I
Yes.
just think of the best, it's best for him because I can have him off leash. And so it
Yeah.
makes a big difference for me.
Mhm. For those of you who don't know, a woman I know, Corinne, was um, had messaged me, and she put on Facebook that she had some puppies that she was like, they needed a home. She was fostering them or something, and super cute. And I messaged her and had asked her about, just said, "Oh, they're adorable. Let me, what's the deal with them?" And she told me a little bit. And that very day, this was like early in the morning, and that very day, I went to a team run, and Tim randomly said to me that the family was looking to adopt a dog, and I was like, "Oh, I just happened to
Yeah.
have found a dog," and I think I connected you with her or connected
Yes, you
Tim with
did.
her, and um, supposed to be a lab, a little
Yeah.
lab puppy, right?
He's not allowed. But it is funny because she was right here in Santa Cruz and I actually
Mhm.
see her. She's become one of my best friends.
That's so
So
awesome.
the dogs get together all the time and
Mhm.
we get together. And so that
He has
was
a
the
lot of
cute.
Chihuahua, right?
Yeah, he's a Chihuahua mix of some kind. He's definitely
Mhm.
got a lot more in him because he's bigger. But
Mhm.
yeah, maybe that's why he's barking at the deer. But
Yeah, I have
it's,
a Chihuahua mix too,
yeah,
and she's bigger than a Chihuahua. She's like 20 pounds. And same kind of deal. She was not described as a Chihuahua,
yeah.
but a friend of mine who has an actual Chihuahua said, no one looks for a Chihuahua. They just find you. And I think that's true.
It's true. When we found out that he had Chihuahua in him and that they all did, Corinne just flat out said, no, no, I will not accept that. Like, well, I think they do, but they're bigger. They're like 30 pounds.
Oh,
So
uh-huh.
they definitely have other in them as well. But yeah,
Other
they're
stuff.
great dogs. So it's been a great
So,
addition. And they help with stress too, because you kind
yes.
of petting them
Mhm.
really helps with that as well. So, you know,
Taking yourself too seriously. My dog's definitely, as much as I work from home. I used to work from home all the time. Now I work from home 3 days a week. And, I would sit at my desk and not get up
yeah,
and just be sucked into the stress of whatever. And they will come in and be like, you will now come play with us or you will walk us now. Like,
yeah,
whatever it is you're doing is not as important as us. And I will get
yeah.
up for them. Maybe not for myself, but I would get up for them. Like,
Right,
okay,
and
well,
that
let's go
makes it
outside and throw the ball.
exactly.
And
I didn't
mhm.
walk. I mean, I've been here for we've been living here for about 7.5 years. And until we got him, I would walk on the beach, definitely. And I walked a fair amount, but I didn't walk every day on the beach. And
Right.
now it's every single day, every morning. Pretty
So good.
much, I'm out there on the beach unless I go somewhere else to walk. So
Right.
those dogs, they make you do something that's really good for yourself.
Mhm,
So I
mhm.
think it's great, and the companionship, and
Yeah, all of that. The unconditional love. They're so
yeah,
happy to see me when I get back,
oh yeah,
A good friend of mine from the team, Leah, I think you know
yeah,
Leah Fine.
yeah,
She got a dog, her kids are out of the house now and she just got a dog and man, they are in love, her and
yeah,
that dog right
yeah.
now. And it's so great to see how much joy it's bringing to her because that's been my experience too. Well, I think we're at the end of our time, but the basic message today is you can take care of yourself. You can eat a plant-based diet. It is not it's
No,
not that complicated. You
no,
can get enough protein by eating, it doesn't have to be something you focus on and freak out about.
no,
Um, and try to de-stress and, you know, animals, dogs are a good way to do that. I think so yeah, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's been super fun for me and informational and inspirational. And I know that you do coach people, like you mentioned, on
mhm,
becoming more plant-based or
yeah,
completely plant-based. So what I'm going to do is put your information in the show notes so that people who are listening to this episode who are interested can reach out directly to you and talk to you
sounds
about
good.
that coaching. So,
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I think it's fun to
all
watch
righty.
people kind of transition and enjoy
Yeah.
it themselves too, and find that it's really not that hard.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, hold on for a second. I'm going to say bye to our listeners, but you and I can stay on for just a second. So,
Okay.
thanks for listening, everybody. Go to wherever you listen to your podcast and like and subscribe. It really helps us get it out there. We appreciate it, and we will see you next week.